Virginia Giuffre was one of the most prominent accusers of Jeffrey Epstein. Western Australia police say they are not treating her death as suspicious.
The death of Virginia Giuffre is going to divide people. Many of us were deeply suspicious when Jeffrey Epstein ended his own life while in prison. And as is often the case in these extraordinary and epochal events, the video footage the surveillance cameras would have provided was for some reason not available. You will be aware that in Washington there was an extraordinary lack of available footage when that plane crashed into the Pentagon. What's going on? Weren't the Trump administration meant to be about disclosure and revelation? Let me know in the comments and chat if you feel that there must be ulterior forces or exterior forces still able to assert and exert pressure on Donald Trump, who in some ways seems like the very pinnacle of human power, a man that can withstand abuse, lawfare and attacks, a man that can achieve in fields like construction and in media, a man who knows how to reach ordinary people, who for so many Americans is the exact epitome and sigil of the type of change that was required in your country. Now, I suppose the Epstein files and whether or not they will be released, many have said, is the true marker and barometer of whether or not the intentions of this new political movement will be fulfilled. You know me, my support was primarily lent, for what it's worth, just as one of many conduits in independent media, when Bobby Kennedy became a part of that movement. I've always seen Bobby Kennedy with his anti-corporate, anti-commercial, outspoken attacks on figures like Anthony Fauci, willingness to go to bat against Big Pharma, to say that Big Pharma are corrupting and intoxicating and in some ways require America to be sick in order to thrive and flourish. I saw him as a kind of hero, the kind of hero that America warranted and required. And when Donald Trump invited Bobby Kennedy to be part of the MAGA movement and Maha was born, I thought nothing as significant as this has happened in recent political memory. If we're going to have an opportunity to drain the swamp, to root out corruption, to expose the deep state, having figures as diverse as Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, that's got to be a better bet than Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and these peculiar, institutional, nominally liberal, but ultimately authoritarian politicians that seem hell-bent on war after war, crisis after crisis, further intervention into American lives. Seems to me we're in a peculiar moment right now, and the death of Virginia Giuffre has got to be a moment for a reckoning and a moment for an examination. Whenever someone close to a significant political story ends their own life, I suppose there are two possibilities. One, she ended her own life because of the incredible pressure of being abused, the trauma of being raped, the feelings of intensive scrutiny and pressure that come from being in high-profile media positions, particularly if you've not spent your life moving in that direction and being inculcated gradually into what it's like to live as an image in other people's mind and to absorb attacks. Or it could be that she was murdered because she had information that was inconvenient. But it's an interesting time to end her life. Now, that whole Epstein operation, most people now in these kind of spaces believe that it's a kind of CIA, Mossad operation to compromise powerful people. So if they ever step out of line, there's material available to blackmail them. That's generally what people think, isn't it? People don't think of Epstein Island as a satanic Luciferian movement where there are blood sacrifices or the murder of children. It's a kind of, as I understand it, you get invited to Epstein Island. There are loads and loads of really beautiful people there. You're given the impression that you're in some Donkey Island, Pinocchio wonderland of sexual availability and pleasure. And if you're not deeply connected to God, those kind of pleasures are irresistible. It seems that Bill Gates has weird connections to it. Bill Clinton has connections to it. Lots of Hollywood stars have connections to it. But it doesn't seem like it's being sufficiently investigated, does it? Let me know in the comments and chat if you want those Epstein files released. I know that Ian Carroll and Candace Owens and those kind of libertarian, outspoken investigators and journalists online say that the Epstein files are the one. Notably, when Carroll was on Joe Rogan, he said, you'll never get the truth about that. I suppose it's quite possible, let me know in the comments and chat if you agree, that some people went to Epstein Island and just participated in decadent parties in the way that All spheres of privilege and elitism have their versions of decadence. Maybe if you're in the financial industry and you've got a bunch of money, you're going to strip clubs and orgies and doing loads of coke and getting it on and stuff. And if you're in Hollywood, certainly it's plain that that's institutionalized. Decadence and hedonism are institutionalized. I believe now, in order to keep people on a particular frequency of behavior and of belief, in short, paganism and false idolatry. Instead of worshipping God and the divine, kindness, service, love, sacrifice, you're trapped in a kind of network of indulgence, institutional sex trafficking. Do you think the legacy media show enough interest in that? And if not, why not? Another question is, do you think it's possible that people went there, like some of the high-profile stars and figures went there, and didn't really know that they were participating in sex trafficking and abuse and corruption? Let me know what you think. Let's get into the terrible, in any event, whether she took her own life or whether she was murdered. It's a pretty sad state of affairs when someone from the age of 17's clearly been objectified and abused and passed around and is now dead. And as a Christian for 1 year today, I pray for the soul of Virginia Giuffre. I pray that she is in the eternal embrace now of the loving Father and that her suffering is over. I pray for all of the victims of abuse. I pray that their peace will be found for everybody that has suffered in this way. All of the people that are pulled into the magnetism of objectification, false idolatry and empty paganism. I pray that they may find now the living Son of the everlasting Father and know the peace that comes with surrender to him. Let's get into this story. Here's the legacy media, the BBC, reporting on this death. And let me know if you feel they're ringing a particular bell.
Virginia Giuffre was one of the most prominent accusers of Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced US financier accused of running a vast sex trafficking network. Giuffre claimed she was trafficked by him and forced to have sex with the Duke of York. This photo of them together, now infamous. Prince Andrew, though, has always denied the accusations. He reached an out-of-court settlement with her in 2022 that contained no admission of liability or apology. In an interview with Panorama in 2019, she stood by the accusations.
He knows what happened. I know what happened. And there's only one of us telling the truth.
In a statement, Virginia Giuffre's family said she was a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking. She was the light that lifted so many survivors. In the end, the toll of abuse is so heavy that it became unbearable for Virginia to handle its weight. We know that she is with the angels. Born in the US, the 41-year-old had recently been living with her children and husband close to Perth, but recent reports suggest the couple had split after 22 years of marriage. Early this month, she posted on Instagram to say that she'd been seriously injured in a car accident, which her family later said she had not intended to make public. Local police later disputed the severity of the crash. Western Australia police say they're not treating her death as suspicious.
Not treating the death as suspicious seems in itself suspicious. Many of you on X, we're still on X now, will have seen this cat turd post, which seems to have captured the general sentiment. Hit by a bus last week, hospitalised in a serious condition, then she recovers but commits suicide this week. Does anyone believe this bullshit? Let me know in the comments and chat if any of you do believe this bullshit. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular. Now we're taking the fight to the next level. When major advertisers conspired to pull their dollary dues, even brands like Dirty Dunkin' Donuts, which I think of as being a bit like the Dunkin' Donut of that Tesla guy that wiped his hand on his butt. Remember him, this guy? Dunkin' Donuts is the donut equivalent of that. The free speech hating pigs, claiming that Rumble had a right-wing culture. How dare they? We're excited to offer you Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. You'll find exclusive content from creators like Russell Brand. Hey, I'm him. Dr. Disrespect. That's my actual doctor. Timcast. Yeah, Timpo. The Mug Club. It's more than a subscription. It's a stand for free speech. You're subscribing to freedom. Your voice matters. Join Rumble Premium. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using the promo code BRAND. Visit rumble.com/premium, promo code BRAND. Together, we can turn the tide. Whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching, your support helps keep free speech alive. Join Rumble Premium and help keep free speech alive, baby. It's a pretty tragic and ugly story made all the more complex by the posting by Virginia Giuffre herself. So I'm making it publicly known that in no way, shape or form am I suicidal. I've made this known to my therapist and general practitioner, that's a family doctor, for those of you that don't know that term. If something happens to me, in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. It's extraordinary perspicacity, I suppose, but anyone that's involved in high-profile media events starts to get the sense that there are other interests at work, even if you take the somewhat more innocuous example of Trump's blue suit. The media decided to frame that story in a particular way. There was no story there. Trump, like many people, was wearing a blue suit. Prince William was wearing a blue suit. You saw the image of the crowd. Loads of people were wearing a blue suit. But the legacy media, or certain interests within the institutions of legacy media, decided to say that even Trump's suit was a toxic component. That's interesting and extraordinary. With the Epstein story, it's pretty clear that it harnesses and is the pinnacle of something pretty profound that's on the edge of our understanding. The idea, I suppose, put simply, as I've said before, is that powerful people are compromised by sexual opportunity, are invited into situations, whether that's the infamous Diddy parties or the Epstein parties or Epstein Island, where they compromise themselves sexually and subsequently become amenable to blackmail. These stories have been around long before the Jeffrey Epstein case broke, long before Epstein's suicide. People used to talk about British politicians being compromised in that way. The ongoing rumours about prime ministers from the late 1970s, like Ted Heath, ideas that British politics was beset by paedophilia, not presumably just because these people have an unusual predilection for having sex with minors and children. And I can see the comments about adrenochrome just flying by in the chat, but perhaps also to ensure that these people remain compromised. How is it that the legacy media do not report on and investigate these stories sufficiently? Whitney Webb has always been, in my view, one of the most important journalistic voices here. And she says many stories are difficult to corroborate. But why do these stories remain difficult to corroborate? What is the information that's withheld? What is the information that's amplified? Why does this happen? I suppose if we look at it open-mindedly and bear in mind vital principles like innocent until proven guilty, it's possible that people went to those islands in order to have decadent and hedonistic fun. Ask yourself this question: are you strong enough to resist the lure of decadent hedonistic fun? And does that necessarily collapse into criminality, abuse, exploitation? For sure, there is a crossover, isn't there? But how do you run your own life? What are your idols and gods right now? One of the reasons I keep banging on about pornography, and I see you lot in the chat telling me to shut up about it, is because pornography, I believe, is the soft end of keeping us all attached to pretty pagan and hollow ideas. By pagan in this instance, I mean the worship of pleasure, the worship of gods that make you deteriorate rather than a God that elevates you, that heals you, that absolves you in your brokenness. Those of you that are interested in conspiracy theories, the collapse of Building 7, the presence of UFOs, the murder of JFK, are in a sense trying to retain, discern, and understand, reaching for true wisdom, the true wisdom that lays outside of the remit of the mainstream, that will tell you continually, as I've told you already today, information that keeps you subservient and submissive, obedient and controlled. If you are obedient to Christ, you will not be obedient to these systems that have been captured by dark forces, dark spiritual powers in high principalities, authorities that govern our institutions, that require of you that you become sick and limp and lukewarm and broken. It is easier, better, as well as verifiably true to wear the yoke of the risen Savior, the Son of the living God, rather than to be captured and hypnotized by the satanic forces that, of course, occupy media, government, global institutions that express themselves through commodification, commercialism, and control. All of us will fall foul of these institutions eventually unless we awaken. Unless you are an insignificant peripheral figure in the margins of life, quietly getting on with it, not bothering anybody, paying your taxes, ultimately controlled, you might eke out your day silently. But I beg of you, awaken now and participate in this glory in the way that you are called to, in love and in earnest and in sincerity from this moment forth. I got no right to dictate to you, even to declare to you anything other than that you follow your personal truth. But as you search the terrain within you, this super state of potentiality that you're interfacing with right now, you may see the image of the bridge. You may feel the pull of the cross. And for those of us that can no longer take the shamanic with all of its demonic allure, for those of you that find it too hard to be out there in those institutions of capture and control that want you subjugated and stupid and sick, you will begin to see among us now, he is risen, he is present in this Easter period, and that we will be granted great gifts to confront these authorities. Virginia Giuffre's death now is a symbol of these times of half-truths, untruths, deception, and propaganda. In order for us to understand the true nature of power, we have to understand the true nature of ourselves. We are fallen, we are broken, we can only be forgiven by him, and we can only know peace by the sacrifice that he made for us. That's, though, just what I think, what I believe, and what on a good day I know. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.